Happy vernal equinox. And like that there. Our subject for today is an exploration of um, rites of passage for women. And we were going to begin with the Croning, but since I'm here now, Paula, you and I can begin with menarche and move upwards. How's that sound?
Fine.
Okay. All right. So, and Cynthia, I understand you do a lot of ceremonies, a lot of rites of passage ceremonies. So please feel free to hop in at any point as we're discussing these things. The reason for this was because Kevin had expressed some concern about not having any knowledge of women's rites of passage ceremonies. And so we decided that maybe we could give some information on that point. Women have more than just 3 ceremonies for life passages. There's really 5 important ones. First one, obviously for everybody, man or woman, is birth, when you are born. Then there is when you transition from, for women, when you transition from being a child, a female child, to being a female maiden. Okay, and that usually is with the start of your first menses or menarche. And that's usually sometime, around 11 or 12, 13 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later, depending on the individual. And then there are several rites of passage when you're in your woman years. There's the marriage, and there's all the things that lead up to that. There are the bridal shower. There's all the things that go around getting married. There's the marriage ceremony itself. There's the honeymoon. There are a number of different aspects to that major life passage event. Not everyone goes through it, but as far as marriage goes, but it could be, instead of marriage, it could be the start of a fantastic career. It could be, the birthing of an amazing idea, celebrating some fabulous artwork, something like that. There is something to celebrate at that point in our lives. And then once a woman has reached the end of her bleeding time, her menses, usually she's not had a period for about a year, somewhere in the early 50s, 49 to 55, somewhere in there, the menses stop. And then a woman enters the period of the wise woman. And that's where, and if you're into astrology, your Saturn has gone around your chart twice, your natal chart twice. I'm not quite sure the significance of that because I'm not into astrology, but I know that's very important to the astrologers among us. And that's usually sometime around your 55th or 56th year, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then you are a wise woman. And then when you get into your 70s and 80s, you can get to the point where by the time you're 80, you can become what they call a stone crone. And then, or a hag. And that is not a derogatory title. It is a title of honor. And so forth. And then there's passing on into the realm of the ancestors. So those are some of the important life passage ceremonies that women have. Now men have their own, and we will be exploring that with Kevin later on in the weeks to come, as he and we find more information on that. There are also some other celebratory things, like if you are a mother, weaning your child. If when you're going to be a mother, when you're going to give birth, there's a thing called the blessing way, which we'll get into, which is a very important ceremony for the mother. And we'll talk about that as opposed to baby showers, which are all about the baby. We want to celebrate the mother and things like that. So, but it all starts when a girl goes from being a child to being a blossoming woman. And that's menarche. That's the first time she has a period. Then it is celebrated that she has entered the realm of womanhood. Albeit she's very young, but she's on her way. And Paula and I have participated in a number of menarche ceremonies because we used to go to a women's Council of Women's celebration up at Camp Susan B. Curtis every summer. We went several times. And this ceremony is very beautiful. Were always women there that had their young daughters with them. And a couple of years, there were several who were entering menarche. And one of the things that we did for them was we created a hoop. Actually, I think we took hula hoops and branches. Isn't that right,
I
Paula?
think so. Yeah.
And flowers and ribbons and gay, colorful pieces of paper that were cut in streamers and things like that. And we made this incredible hoop for them. And that hoop was symbolic of their transition from being a child to being a young woman. And we, with songs and dances and parades and all sorts of chants and things, we had the girls dance through the hoop. We all danced through the hoop ultimately, but the little girls went first. And it was a very joyous time. And we celebrated welcoming them into womanhood. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. Do you remember, Paula, anything else about that ceremony that we did that was special?
Well, the girls actually made us necklaces out of red
That's right. Red twine or something.
red twine or something, and I think they made us crowns out of branches, out of twigs that they wove together. That was their gift back to those of us who were already there. But to see these young women and the emotion that was involved, they were so proud of themselves, which, I mean, I remember when I first got my period, it was awful. And my mother gave me a book and we didn't even talk about it. These girls were celebrating, and it was just wonderful to see them and their mothers get the joy out of this. This is something special. This is not a curse. This is not something awful. This is something special. And so to watch them go through the hoop, and as we went through the hoop, we actually gave the year that we transitioned, which was kind of for us the rite of passage being honored, because I was, in most of our cases, never was. But yeah, they had ribbons and crowns, and oh yeah, they looked lovely. And they enjoyed themselves, you know. That's all I can remember.
Yeah. I can remember when, as Paula said, when we women, older women, were invited to relive that moment in our lives and participate in this very, very, very special ritual. For me, it was very profound because I grew up in a male dominant, not dominated, but dominant. There were more men in my family, and my mother was, she didn't know anything about any of this stuff, and neither did my Aunt Betty. So I never had any initiations of any kind. And it was very moving for me to be able to live that ceremony, to live that moment in my life. Although many years later, I was already at Crown. But to be able to be invited to go back and experience that feeling was very profound for me. because at that point in my life, at the ceremony, I was still struggling with becoming a crone. I had had a hysterectomy and was, was still in mourning for the loss of that part of my womanhood, and I was very conflicted about a lot of things. So that ceremony for me was very affirming and enlightening, and it washed away so much of the sorrow and sadness that I had not been given those opportunities in my earlier years, to embrace that part of my existence. So it was a very, very profound ceremony. And as Paula said, the little girls, their faces were just alight and aglow with joy, and the mothers as well. So it's something that we all shared that day, and it was really quite wonderful. Cynthia, have you had any experiences with that ceremony?
Yes, well, the traditional red, I say traditional, the neo-pagan style of red tent. And,
Uh-huh.
and I did, something similar for my own daughters, but I echoed what my mother had done for me and what my grandmother had done for my mother. So it's kind of been a tradition in the things that we do around that time. And I'm hoping that if they have daughters, they'll continue them. I think it's very important for those family lines, if you can, for that continuity, that sense of self, I think becomes so strong out of that. It can really be quite, like you said, a transformative experience.
Jenny, do you have anything to add?
I've performed a couple of the maiden ceremonies, and they are really special. There's a book that's just amazing. It's called Circle of Stones. And there's, do you have that one?
Yeah,
I
I
do,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a chapter in there that begins with, what if on the day you became a woman, your aunties and your mother had gotten you dressed up and taken you out for a meal and bought you presents. And basically it's just the most beautiful thing, because it talks about, it's not just that the world is lacking in ceremony and ritual right now, but Americans are especially bereft because we're such a salad bowl of different cultures that we don't have our own. So we've gone out and borrowed from a lot of other cultures, and that's okay as long as we, give honor and credit to those other cultures that we've borrowed from. But I think it would be a grand idea to get back to incorporating, some of the older traditions like this, because, as I was a teacher for the Uniteens, the junior high school kids at Unity Church, we did a Wednesday night program, and we had like we had a 6-week lessons on life skills. I would bring an ironing board and a shirt, and kids today wear t-shirts, they don't iron, so they don't have a clue even how to iron if they needed to. And these are the kinds of things that's like, I went and lived on a 250-acre farm in Ohio to learn how to do some survival skills, not because I had to or I thought the world was coming to an end, but because I didn't want those skills to be lost. And so I feel the same way with our ritual and our ceremony. I think that, we've lost so much and it needs to be replaced. And I think when, like Cynthia found a more traditional path by attending classes and working from that perspective. But even if we don't have that going on, we get to make it up and do ceremony and ritual whatever way feels the most comfortable to us. And so I love that idea, and I think it's necessary. When I was doing the teaching with the junior high school, we had another program called House of God, and I took them to a mosque and temple. We actually went to a bar mitzvah, and we had asked these kids to write a mission statement. And it could be like one sentence or two sentences. It didn't have to be really long. And oh, they complained like we were asking them to have a root canal. And then after we went to the bar mitzvah, and I said, well, maybe you'd rather do it this way, where you spend years learning Hebrew so that you can stand up and make a small speech in front of people. No. So I got no more complaints about having to write a mission statement after that, But it's the concept that at a bar mitzvah or a bar mitzvah, this person who is in that Neverland, they're not quite an adult, but they're no longer a child. But in Jewish tradition, the young man at 13 has to stand up and say, today my father is no longer responsible for my actions. So it's a joint thing where, we're taking responsibility for becoming an adult. And we have this limbo we put our children here in America in, and that's the teen years, where we have no idea what we want to expect of them. And they therefore have no idea of what we do expect from them. They can't live up to expectations that are not expressed. They might be able to if we said, here's what we anticipate that you'll be looking at and doing or working on until you reach adulthood, but we don't do that. We just have lots and lots of expectations around them, but we don't share those. So anyway, I think that that all of these ceremonies are vital and important. And if we don't have them, we need to make them up and bring as many people into the fold as want to participate in those. So yeah, they're very valuable.
Does anybody else have anything to add? Nikki, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I was raised with boys and I had sons, so.
Okay, got it.
Female ceremonies
you
were
loud
not
and
really a
clear.
part of my life.
When
But
my
I'm
son,
listening.
go ahead. When my son gets married, I'm hoping that, he and his lady really want to have children, and I'm hoping for a granddaughter. So we'll see. Anybody else? Ariana?
I just wanted to say that I think the ceremonies are so beautiful, and through time, it's interesting how us, like women in general, how that beauty and support and strength that we're given to each other was kind of taken away, and we were thought of having a menstrual cycle was like a horrible thing or a shameful thing. And I mean, I was one of those, I got my period early. So like, I remember, kids were still very immature and not aware of it being a womanhood. I mean, my mom was supportive as much as she could be. She's like, you're a woman now, but it's also like, I didn't know how to use a tampon or anything, like not to go like gory or anything, but it was like, it was just not really talked about as much and stuff like that. And I just think it's so beautiful. The rituals in general that we had as celebrating, and it's more now accepted. I think people are circling back to these traditions and these ceremonies in general. I think also with like the equinox, people are more aware of the seasons and all the other traditions too, which I think is really beautiful. But I just really love the way that people honor the youth and honor the elders together. I think it's just a really beautiful thing.
I think it's important too to remember that we're not talking that everything has to be elaborate. It can be a simple thing that is inclusive in your family that you'd like to have passed down, and for my kids, if it's less complicated, I know there's a future to it. So, that I have to keep that in mind when we mark various life transitions. That the less complicated, it's more memorable for them because they'll remember the details because they don't have to enumerate things off a list, right? So
The intent and the intent behind it, and the the emotional support and sense of community and so forth is what's really important at the heart of any of these rituals. The mechanics can change depending on the situation and the group and the people involved, but it's the intent behind it that really makes it special. And as Cynthia said, it can be as simple as, taking your daughter out to dinner, and showering her with a few gifts, special gifts, a quiet talk. My, as you know, my son and future daughter-in-law are getting married in September. Third time's a charm. Let's see if they can have it this time. And I was thinking, she's going to have, I think her mother's planning some sort of a bridal shower for her. And I think she's finally going to do her trip with her friends for her bachelorette party. But I've been thinking, I want to take her to dinner and I want to sit down or take her for a walk on the beach in the afternoon and just spend a day with her or spend a few hours with her and just talk to her about what it means to me to be in a long-term loving relationship. I am a wife, I am a partner, I am a lover. And there are subtleties to all of that I very much would like to impart to her from my perspective as my gift to her, to perhaps help prepare her for life with my son for the rest of her life, or for as long as the love shall last, whatever. And explain to her that it doesn't always work the first time. I'm hoping it will with them. They've been together for a long time, but having lived together for a long time doesn't mean you're committed partners. It's like a prelude, and I want to express to her all of my insights from 22 years of marriage with John, 11 with his father, or with Kevin's father, and maybe give her some insights, and I think that would be far more valuable than showering her with a bunch of silly gifts. So it's like that sort of thing. It's the intent and the expression of support and so forth that are very, very important. Okay, have we talked? Kevin, do you have any questions?
You're muted.
There we go.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've any questions. I feel real privileged. I feel like I've had a crash course from some very knowledgeable people. And I just made a few notes. Now I had one thought that when you I don't know, I had one thought and I lost it. I guess it's somewhere out in the ether. But no, I found this really enlightening, and I can see I compare the rituals to my upbringing and what were considered the ritualistic stages and whatever, and I can see a lot of parallels. But in my case, the spirituality was knocked out of it all along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more to, I see it was designed more for me to conform than it was for me to explore. And so, so I found this really enlightening, and I look forward to reading the information. And if anyone can find any visual stuff, like videos or whatever, send it to me, because that I can watch. Reading it takes me a while to get through an article, but I found this incredibly enlightening, and we're we're a community because of our rituals. And I know death rituals inside note, but I don't know much about life rituals. And that's where the big difference is, because your life rituals are going to enhance your life, as the death rituals basically don't do you much good until you, but I should say do you much good, beneficial, but they're a little late in the game. And I would rather have learned these messages at 8, 9, 10 in my life, so I had something to look forward to.
Okay, well, we will be sending you what we find as we do our research and help you along your quest.
Okay, I'd love anything that you can condescend.
So, Laura, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I got knocked off there for a little while. The cat
Mm.
hit a key and I was gone. But my first crowning ceremony was with you, Sally, at your house,
Mhm.
and with Paula, and I was so impressed with that. I just thought that was the coolest thing. And then I remember the big one that we did at Martha's house.
Oh, yeah.
A bunch of people, and that was beautiful. We did that one outside, and it was beautiful. What I thought was cool about it, the first time I did it, was when we had to write. We wrote a paragraph about our maidenhood years and a paragraph about our motherhood years and what we expected in our Croning years. And that was really cool. I still have all of that. And I have a whole bunch of pictures of that ceremony at Martha's. I took a lot of pictures
Oh,
there.
do you? Great.
Yeah, yeah. I have a whole little book of those pictures. I have a couple pictures from the one at your house, but I have a bunch from Martha's.
I have both the ceremonies right here in this folder. I was looking for them the other day and I found them. And what I can do is I can, I'll scan them in and send them to, I can send them to Nikki or to Francis, who wants them. You can put them on the Google Drive or wherever you want to put them. The Croning ceremony that we
Yeah, you
did.
can send it. You can send it to me.
Okay. All right. Okay. Francis, do you have any 2 cents to put in?
Well, the only real ceremony that I went through was the Croning ceremony with Cynthia a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it felt transitional, it felt transformational, it really did. I mean, it was so grounding, and it was a good opportunity for me to sort of look back on my life and to look forward. I mean, the biggest thing about the Croning ceremony, I think, is that it was created, right, because women are dispensed with after they've had their children, and they don't have a purpose anymore, right? So so the Croning ceremony is a great way to embrace the aging process, and to embrace all of the wisdom that's been gathered throughout my lifetime, and honor that.
I think originally in the times pre-Christianity, we were, the Croning ceremony was not like to make up for the fact that nobody thought we were worth anything anymore, because partially in the old days, it was that we respected and honored wisdom and age. They were not considered to be superfluous or throwaway. And so it was woven into the fabric of daily life to honor and respect, and each other. Well, that kind of got beat out of us. I'm not exactly sure. I have my own theories about why or how that happened. But the fact is that we kind of got hypnotized, allowed our power to be usurped from us as individuals. And what we're in the process of doing now is relearning how to claim that back and say, no, everyday life is something to be celebrated. The fact that we got through it, that we want to embrace it now and not say, oh, that's irrelevant. If we're all doing something, it's not irrelevant, no matter how many times we hear that it is on TV or radio or in the newspaper. It's like, okay, we need to ignore all of that and focus on, again, what is truly important. And each and every one of us are just as important as the next person, just as powerful, just as entitled to claim that power. So, we also have to expand our thinking to be more inclusive of the rest of the world too. So, and I see memes on Facebook, just to give you an example of, the Muslim women in their hijabs, and we shake our head and tisk tisk here about, oh, poor women are forced to do that. And then they have a picture right next to that of a nun in full habit. It's like, okay, what's the difference? And, we revere and respect the nuns because they've dedicated their lives to a certain way, and, like, good on them for doing that. So you see what I'm talking about, though. It's like, this is not, this is something that we all knew. It's in our cellular structures, I think, to honor, appreciate, respect, love, and all of those things for each other. And yet, because of external circumstance, we forgot how. And so we're relearning it now. And I'm kind of excited about that, because everyone who's been through a ceremony says, yeah, it meant something. It might have seemed a little silly at the time, but after anyone has a chance to think about it, they kind of jump on that and say, yeah, that was important. So.
And especially with the crones, it's with the wise women and the male elders of the community, their wisdom, life experience and wisdom is paramount to the continuation of the community. For women, it is vital that we share and pass down our hard-won knowledge to the generation, coming next. And without that, there's no continuity. There's no there's no memory of our roots, where we came from, and so forth. And that's incredibly important, that we acknowledge that, and we honor that, and we take that into our beings. Otherwise, our society falls apart.
I went up north to Northern California with Celia for a Dianic, which is conference with Z Budapest. And there were 125 to 150 women there. It was incredible. And so the night that they have their initiation, their ceremony for ordination, I guess, we went to it's a round circle, with the steps going up, so that, it's kind of like, what am I trying to say? It's a bowl, and the ceremony happens in the bottom of the bowl.
Like an amphitheater?
Yeah, like an amphitheater. So, and it's in a circle. So I showed up and we went in groups of maiden, mother, and crone. So the crones were I can't remember where we were in that process, but as we approached as a group, all the young women that were going to be ordained or initiated came, each one came to one of the crones and said, let me help you. And it was just amazingly emotional to be honored that way. Still.
You find it very moving. Yes. I started reading that book, Women's Rights, Women's Mysteries by Ruth Barrett, Frances, that you told me about yesterday. Amazing. I don't know how far you've gotten into it, but I read all through the introduction. I think I read first 3 chapters, all in one sitting, and I found it very profound.
Good.
You know,
That was the textbook that we used in my priestess studies, was Temple of Diana.
yeah, it's a
Ruth
beautiful
Barrett
book.
and Falcon River. Yeah, it's very profound. It just that innate sacredness of being human, but especially as women,
Mhm.
our essential connection to nature is so profound for me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the book. I
I
think
hope you
I'm
enjoy it.
going to devote a portion of this afternoon for that. It's very good book. I have a number of and a number of books in the bibliography at the end of the book. I have on my shelves here, so I can go and I can refer to a lot of them. But there's it's been decades since I've visited those concepts and those thoughts, and it's nice to reconnect with them, because they're very relevant today, extremely relevant today, and extremely important, that we as women uh, reconnect with that portion of our being, which is so unique. Men are unique as well, and you have your profound and unique gifts to give to this world. I can only speak to the female part, and it was important for me to read some of those paragraphs and go, oh yeah, I remember. Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. Yes, yes, Um, so I'm feeling quite in it. And last night and this morning were perfect times for that, being the equinox and the time of balance and all of that, and finding my balance within myself and balance within the world that I inhabit. So it's thank you for who was it you that you who was it, Marie? Somebody turned you on to that book,
Yeah,
Francis.
Marie
Yeah.
recommended it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very good book, very, very good book. Um, Bobby, are you there?
I am.
You kind of flicker in and out with your
I
background.
know, it's weird.
Well, that's how it is with digital backgrounds. We'd like to hear from another crone. Do you have any thoughts on life passages?
Well, I think that in our culture, it's very confused with social and class structure. For example, those of you on the Eastern Seaboard are more familiar with the debutante season. So many people in our culture celebrate it through, I think, the rites of no doubt social passages, which is like making your debut. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was never presented. I was never a debutante, but perhaps some of you were. But I think it got more into the realm of class distinction rather than being a female thing per se. So I think our culture has a very different way of looking at that than many others do.
Yeah, they've secularized it to the point where it's almost meaningless.
Yeah, well, it's really financialized it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
It's more a question of if you're a debutante and you make the right impression with the right people, you're presented at the right ball, which means basically you're put into the inner circle. So it's really a class distinction, really a separation issue more than a united issue in our culture.
Yeah, yeah, it's time to get back to some of the basics.
Yes, yes.
Very much so. Okay, does anybody else have any comments about this?
I just
Yes,
have-
Sally, I do.
Go ahead,
Thank
Charlie.
you.
Okay, Charlie, go for it.
Yeah. There's a couple of ceremonies everybody's left out. One is a very important one in my life and others' lives, is the ritual of a young person receiving the sacrament of communion at that age of their life, 5 or 6.
It's usually 7, isn't it?
Or 6. Well, the age of reasoning
Which is 7.
yeah. So it's a very important ritual that I had a negative experience from.
Mm.
But I'm sure there's another ritual that women, I don't know if you could consider it a negative experience that wasn't brought up.
And that ritual is the sacrifice of virgins. So you could talk a little bit about that subject, what it meant to be sacrificed as a virgin in the ancient past. But back to the communion ritual, all of us young boys and girls, there was like 100 of us that were dressed in white and presented to the bishop or the cardinal to receive our first communion. And we were all schooled in what to expect, because God is in the communion wafer, and it's and God, only the priests are next to God. They're the ones that are closest to God. So that's what you learn. And of course, then the nuns are very close to God as well. So when we were parading up to the altar railing to receive our first communion, this happened to be in a gymnasium during the war, and because we didn't have a church. And we were parading, there was 50 boys and 50 girls about. And as I passed by the water fountain, I took a drink out of the water fountain. And I was scolded harshly for that.
By a nun.
By a nun wearing black. It's something you never forget when you're scolded harshly. And it impacted my life quite a bit. And so it wasn't appreciation of love of God, it was appreciation of the fear that was introduced in the fear of God, or the impotency of the humanistic powers of the priests or the nuns. And when you get back to the ritual of sacrificing women or virgins to gods, they might have the great intention in the world, and maybe the women, some of the women felt that they were
An honor.
It's an honor for them. I don't know. But I'd like that addressed as far as you're talking about rituals and rites of passage. I know it's coming out on the negative side of all your beautiful stories and wonderful rites of passage as women, and I support that wholeheartedly, and I appreciate your sharing your passage. But some rites of passages are maybe misguided or misled and result in suffering.
I'll have to do some research into that, because that's something that never entered my frame of reference for any of this. That's on my first thought is that falls into the realm of religious practices,
Right.
not rites of passage for women. However, I will do some research and see if there's anything in pre-Christian lore or ancient lore, that ancient goddess worship or anything like that includes anything like that. I think that falls more into the realm of patriarchal worship and so forth.
I think it was also geographically more Aztec and that kind of thing. I don't think it was done all over the world, but it certainly was done in the Aztec society and the Inca society. But that was part of their entire ritualistic thinking, that it was an honor to be the Vestal Virgin who was in fact sacrificed.
Yeah, but again, that all falls into religion, not women's rites of passage.
I think that's where the two meet in a very unfortunate way.
Yeah, it's an important subject to explore. So I'll do some more research and see what I can find out about that, Charlie.
That'd be interesting.
Thank you, Sally. But along with what Kevin was saying, it's an attempt to bring spirituality into ceremony. And you can't separate religion, which is a way of being in the world, a way of believing. And if the intent is to bring spirituality into the experience of the ritual, that I think that has validity.
All right, we'll see where this leads us, see where this takes us.
But the communion thing is only in the Catholic religion, because I
Yeah.
never went through any of that.
I think it's also in the high Episcopal, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's in a very few realms of Christianity. Certainly not in the Southern Baptists.
Yeah, but it's around the world.
It's around the world, yes.
Yeah, it's not just
Well,
the USA.
communion as such is a Christian construct.
Actually,
Christian
it started with Osiris.
Yeah,
It
but yeah,
started in ancient Egypt
Yeah,
with
it goes back-
Osiris. And when he got chopped up by his brother and Isis found all of his pieces again, but before she found all the pieces, they made wheat cakes in the shapes of different parts of his body. And that's what people ingested at that time. So communion has been an ancient ceremony that's been around for a long time. And again, when Christianity, they're just the new kid on the block, basically, when you look at the history of humans on the planet.
Right.
And they took, whatever they thought they could benefit from and kept it, and then changed some of it and discarded the rest, so it was a real cherry picking experience there once Christianity hit. And, things have been kind of wonky since then, but anyway, that's communion has been around forever, and it's whatever experience you have with that is kind of what you're going to go with, I think. And it's too bad that you had a bad experience. Was the experience of communion bad, Charlie, or just the fact that a nun yelled at you?
Well, that kind of destroyed everybody hungers, want to be close to God, right?
Did she tell you why she was upset that you
Oh
got
yeah,
water?
you're supposed to fast from midnight from everything, including water. You're not allowed to have anything to eat. So I was a sinner, I guess, in her mind, and I felt it was a harsh judgment for 6-year-olds. Anyway, and it later impacted me later in life when I owned some property and I was brought in front of a magistrate. The person that was charging me with doing wrong had absolutely no grounds for it. But I couldn't defend myself. I went because a woman was a magistrate sitting high up, all dressed in black, and I froze. But thank God for that woman, because she saw my freezing and she had the compassion to draw the information out of me so it could show that I was harmless. And so the accused, I was accused and I was forgiven for not having done what they said I did, that type of thing. So yes, it leaves an impact from early childhood learning.
Okay.
I have one comment. I think bringing back the rituals are very important for women, because having worked with women all my life, I learned not to trust women. They couldn't wait to stab you in the back. And so therefore my trust issues with women, even though they went way back to my mother who couldn't protect me, continued. That was always reinforced. You watch your back. But I really think it's because we were missing these rituals as women. We never were honored. So we don't believe we should be able to trust each other or be trustworthy. So I think bringing them back, teaching the young women how to value each stage of their life and honor them as themselves and teach them to trust their own intuition is very important in the way the world is going today.
And I think
So
historically, that all goes back to the 1960s, to the women's movement. That was a lot of the issues, the psychodynamics behind the movement was that issue.
yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that can be fixed, rectified, whatever, if we start teaching women at a young age to honor
Absolutely.
themselves.
Absolutely.
Just my 2 cents.
So love Love put into any ritual, real love, unconditional love, is beautiful. And that is what's so great about the rituals that we perform in the ministry, because they're full of love and grace.
Well, this has been a wonderful discussion of at least part of the women's rites of passage and in general rites of passage and their importance. Would somebody like to pray us out? Are we done for today? Okay. Would somebody like to pray us out?
Sally, you do such a great job at that.
Okay. All right. Mother, Father, God, creator of all that is, nurturer of life on earth and in the cosmos, we thank you for being with us this day. Thank you for inspiring us to share our personal stories with rites of passage for women and for men. Thank you for reminding us of the importance of ritual in the continuity of our life and the continuation of our societies. Thank you for inspiring us to dig deeper into those mysteries, thus getting closer to you and to the purpose of all of this. Thank you again for your love and support. We appreciate it. We need it. We love it. We honor it. Thank you for all the healing that this does, to remind us that we are all one and that we have the power to create a new and fresh and lovelier world every day of our lives. Thank you for healing us in all the ways that we need to be healed, according to your plan and our highest and best good. And as that such, we ask specifically for healing for certain people that we personally know of. And we will say their names now, that you may be aware that we are aware that they need healing. John,
Joan,
Vic,
Annette,
Charlie,
Dora,
me,
Tiffany,
Bobby,
Fred,
Charlie,
me, Matthew,
Lori,
Ernie, Lindy,
Dean,
Jim,
this is
Tricia,
Dale, RC, all the children
Dorothy,
of the
and
world
Larry.
Celia,
suffering from diseases,
My old friends.
our world leaders. Mother, Father Divine, you've heard the names of those whom we know need healing. You know their needs. You know what they should and need to have healed according to your plan and their highest and best good. We leave them in your capable, loving arms. Again, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for inspiring us and for loving us and for keeping us in your loving arms. We thank you in the name of love and of all goodness. And so it is.
So it is. Thanks, Sally.
Welcome.
All right, see you guys next time. Take care, have a good week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Namaste,
Happy spring,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Happy spring.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Happy spring.
Da, 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 da.